I'm Lin-Manuel Miranda, and you're listening to Hard Knock Life.
At the park, my mother would say, "Stay close," but my father
Hey,
would
Dominic.
say, as he smiled,
Hi, Keith, Joe.
"Run, Kamala."
You know, it's been a while since we've podcasted.
Yeah. Did anyone feel they were left without dope rhymes to step to?
I will just say straight up, I'm a little discombobulated today because I'm still reeling from that fucking football game yesterday.
Right.
Bears
AKA
Commanders.
the most spectacular ending to an NFL game yet this year that just happened to not result in a win for your team.
It was the worst. And we'll get the sports ball out of the way. I'm surprised you're not depressed. I know the 49ers won, but Nick Bosa, like, we won't talk about Nick Bosa.
He's injured, right?
No, you didn't see the MAGA hat during Brock Purdy's interview?
Oh, is that what happened?
That's
Well,
Brock Purdy was giving his post-game interview, and Nick Bosa comes running out, pointing at his MAGA hat.
Oh, he's mentally injured.
Yeah, and then like a little bitch during his press conference, someone asked him about it, and he was like, I was just like that was quote verbatim what he said. If you're gonna be a jerk, stand by it.
I get it. Now, well, yeah, no, that is depressing on a different front. I feel like we're just leaving it to we haven't provided all the context. Keith is a big Bulls fan.
Bears.
Are you not a Bulls fan?
Yeah, but the Bulls season's already lost, so I'm not even worried about it.
Bulls, Bears, Chicago sports. I'm a Niners guy, and yeah, I'm just starting to apprehend that Bosa is MAGA. Apparently, he's one of the Niners' top defensive guys. But you know what? They've got 6 other defensive guys who are also pretty great.
Yeah. No, so yeah, Bears Commanders.
Anyways.
It got flexed into like the prime slot, the 4 p.m. slot where only the West Coast teams play.
Yeah.
And the East Coast teams who play at 4 p.m. is the ones who get all the attention because that's where.
Yeah. Because they're supposed to have 2 star rookie quarterbacks.
Yeah, number 1 and 2. And a lot of storylines. Montez Sweat for the Bears coming home. He was traded from the Commanders last year. Caleb Williams is from DC. And he's coming home. And you could tell he was like juiced because of that. Because for the first 3 quarters, he played like shit. Like every pass. I don't know how much of the game you actually watched, but every pass was like, 5 yards above someone's head. But he pulled together in the fourth quarter. Our defense was bend, don't break. Jaden Daniels. This is the first game I've ever watched Jaden Daniels play.
Yeah.
I get it.
He's a monster.
I get it.
He's a superhero.
He is. I used to think like, because, there was for a brief moment people saying the Bears should draft Jaden over Caleb. And I was, and me, I was in the team keep Justin camp.
At that point, yes.
And I was like, why would we draft Jaden Daniels, who's just the skinnier Justin Fields? He's not. He's like the Spider-Man to Justin Fields, like, brute force strength or whatever.
I do like how Jaden Daniels is sort of representing the dominance for skinny guys. He does come off as a relatively skinny football player, but he's
slippery.
Yeah.
And he flicks the ball like nothing. And it just travels 70 yards.
I can already tell this sports ball thing is going to go for a while. Happy Sports Equinox Day. That's the occasion of this.
Right.
All the major league American sports are playing at once: baseball, basketball, a football game, and also hockey and Major League Soccer. So that's the occasion of the state. Sports Equinox Day. We're good.
And plus, like Shohei Ohtani coming back from injury, when he hurt his shoulder the other night, everyone thought all was lost. And let me say this. Yankers. They are a bunch of Yankers. Yankees, Dodgers. Whoever wins, we all lose, I think is how the motto goes.
It is. It's true. As a Giants fan, I am compelled to root for the Yankees, which I've never done before. It's weird, but I am rooting for the Yankees.
So, like, who triumphs? Your Giants fandom or your like Asian fandom? Because like Ohtani is the fact that Ohtani is the greatest baseball player of all time has to be like important.
Oh
right?
yeah, I root for Ohtani.
Yeah, sorta. I used to until he went to the Dodgers.
Right,
I don't
exactly,
like him.
Exactly that kind of thing.
Isn't it weird?
Yeah, even in the racial draft, we can have second thoughts.
I see fellow Asians wearing the Ohtani jersey, and I'm like, There's Japanese guys on the Cubs. That's who I root for.
He's a Dodger now. Anyway. I think we anyway. So that's some context, but yeah.
Oh, so yeah. Let me
Yankees
just
all the
get the
way.
Bears game out the way so we can talk
the
about
Bears
the
game was
important thing.
huge. It was huge.
So we play like shit for 3 quarters. Caleb finally gets his act together. Your boy DeAndre Swift breaks off a 55-yard run for a touchdown. Back in the game,
saving Caleb's ass in many ways.
We march downfield. Okay, I'm gonna say I hate the coaches for this team, all of them, every single one down the line. I hate all of them. Whoever was on Hard Knocks, I hate all of you now. We get all the way to the 1-yard line, and we decide we're gonna do a trick play and give the ball to our backup offensive lineman. And he proceeds to drop the ball. Washington recovers. Fortunately, we get the ball back because our defense is still a stout defense. Caleb marches them all the way down the field again. This time we score.
Right. Yeah, with Roshan Johnson, right?
With Roshan Johnson, with 20 seconds left on the clock.
Yeah.
And then we do a 2-point conversion, so we're up 3, so they have to kick a field goal to tie it.
Yeah, and just as a freeze frame, at this moment, it looks like a spectacular Chicago Bears,
Oh my God, I was jumping up and down.
Ending quarter, final
Did you have to think, again, the emotional roller coaster. I was so depressed for 3.5 quarters.
Yeah.
The Swift touchdown. All of a sudden, I'm amped again. Okay, we made it a game.
Yeah.
The Kramer fumble, I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
We did it again. We get to the goal line and we don't know how to play football. And then Caleb, we get us up. Caleb comes back down. We get the touchdown, the 2-point conversion.
I'm very heroic on Caleb's part.
Oh my God. I mean, this is why, as much as of a Fields fan as I was, I can admit that's something he never did. He never put the team on his shoulders and marched them down the field. I will say this is not the first time our coaching staff blew a game we were predicted to win by 96%. There were 3 games last year where we were up by multiple scores in the 4th quarter that we lost.
Yeah.
Because of bad coaching.
Yeah.
There was a win probability of this game when we took the lead of 96%.
Yeah. Well,
and there's a screenshot on
Skynet's that probability, but okay.
There's a screenshot on social media that is just brutal. It shows the score 15-12 Bears with zeros on the clock. And the caption says the Bears lost this game.
Yeah. Latency problems on the box score updates. But anyway, do take us through the thing.
So we're going to win. There's 20 seconds left on the clock. We kick the field goal that they kick the kickoff. They return it. So they're wasting some time off the clock. And again, this is where in the coaching, for those of you who know anything about coaching, there's 2 ways you can go about like end game when there's only like seconds left. You can either play defense like you normally would, or you can do what they call prevent defense. You hear that analogy a lot in other contexts nowadays. Prevent defense is basically you just take all of your defenders and you're just trying to prevent them from scoring a touchdown. And there's a case to be made.
The only thing that can't happen.
The only thing that matters, you can't have a touchdown. But Tony Romo, the announcer, said during the game, at the play before the Hail Mary was the important play.
Yeah.
Where they just let them get 13 yards and go out of bounds.
Yeah. That was poorly done by the Bears.
Well, and what pisses me off about Eberflus, our coach, is when he was asked about that, he said that play doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's a fireable offense.
He's wrong. He's wrong on that point. That play matters a lot.
The Commanders coach said that was the most important play because they stopped the clock and they gave Jaden Daniels 13 more yards. So he could throw a 50-yard touchdown rather than an 80-yard touchdown or whatever,
Which was also improbable, but that first play made it just that much more probable that suddenly, it's not 96% anymore. It's
the next play, 2 seconds left on the clock, Jaden dancing around, he launches at 50 yards and it gets tipped in the end zone. It gets tipped on the 2-yard line, actually. It didn't even make it to the end zone. And they win the game. Did you see Tyreek Stevenson, our cornerback? Did you follow what happened?
I saw that whole thing. I think that part is a little inflated. I understand it's silly, but it's obnoxious. But my view on it was that those Hail Mary plays are so determined by randomness anyway. Like one person more or less, I don't think makes that magical tip not happen go to directly that guy, except that he was uncovered.
Can I explain why it was completely Tyreek Stevenson's fault?
Go ahead, please.
So just more context. It was caught later after the game. Some fan posted a video that Tyreek Stevenson was taunting the crowd while, like, before the play, but then the ball was snapped and he still got his back turned and he's still taunting the crowd.
Yeah, don't do that.
And he turns around, he sees the receivers running down the field, and then he jumps into the play. Now, why? So to your point, I mean, it's random when it comes to Hail Marys. It's a 1 in a million chance that's why it's called a Hail Mary. But Stevenson had a very specific role in that defense. He's the guy. There's in the Hail Mary, they call the defense. One of the players on the defense is called the savior. His job is to keep everyone in front of him.
So
and make
completely
sure
realized religious metaphor.
Yeah, total. It's all on purpose. Keep everyone in front of him, and you're not allowed to let any offensive player behind you.
Right.
Because Tyreek was distracted, he wasn't paying attention. And so he run, and then the other thing, so he's the savior. He's supposed to be in the back. But I think when it's kind of like when a kid gets caught doing something, so they overcompensate.
Yeah.
When he got caught realizing, oh, I wasn't paying attention to the play, he, instead of running to his spot where he was supposed to go, he runs to the scrum, and he's the one who tips the ball. He jumps.
Oh my God.
And he tips the ball. And so his second mistake is tipping the ball, because it was another player's job to hit the ball. His job is to make sure the receiver doesn't catch it. But again, in that kind of like space of like, oh shit. And he goes, like, let me make a play. And he jumps to tap the ball. He taps it backwards. His guy who he's responsible for catches the touchdown, game over.
I didn't realize that.
So it is completely his fault. And I think it's got to do with the psychology of, oh shit, instead of doing your job.
Right. No, you're right. He overcompensated. He fully forgot to understand his assignment.
Yeah, he did not understand the assignment. So yeah, I've been in a funk. And then on top of that, you know, that Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden.
And there was a Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden. I don't know how we can correlate those things. I don't know.
Well, just a deep funk of depression. Like, it didn't help that Nick Bosa flashed his MAGA hat. You know, because I watched the Niners game thinking, let me try to see, you know, feel good for Dominic at least, because his team will win this game, and even that was a depressing sight.
Yeah, we like. Yeah, but you know, there's one on every team. I'm sure there are many like MAGA linebackers, and you know, that's the weird thing. One of the weird things about watching the NFL, with all the compromised feelings of like promotes violence and head injuries and all these things. You know, you're supposed to not too much think about the political alignments of the things, as opposed to NBA, much less so. In NBA, we sort of think about the personalities, what people stand for, and they're more vocal about it. And NFL, we sort of put selective blinders on. So yeah, I don't want to get into that aspect either, except to say that I was happy for the Niners to win, an ugly win. It doesn't look like they didn't exactly dominate decisively in the way that one would hope against the Cowboys, because the Cowboys are pretty mediocre. And I do like rooting against the Cowboys in the sense that they are sort of a institutional, fucked up kind of.
It's like rooting against the Dodgers and the Yankees.
I mean? Yeah. And they're especially mediocre at this moment, so there's a shot in for you there. But anyway, my team at least did come with the outcome of a win, and so I feel for you, even though objectively I say, being not a big Bears fan, that play was really amazing to watch.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it hurts also that, you know, I grew up around Washington Commanders fans, right? When they were the Redskins, right? I lived, you know, outside DC, and my whole family grew up as Washington fans, and that extra sting of it being the Commander, like my cousin's been texting me, and it's been obnoxious. So there's that added thing, and like for it, and you know, another kind of like twist in the knife. It doesn't matter so much to me, but for Caleb is that, again, like I said, Caleb's from DC, and famously when he was in high school, his school Gonzaga beat another school, DeMatha High School, for the Catholic school championship on a Hail Mary play in 2018. Like Caleb rise to fame started with that Hail Mary. And I think the happiest people last night were like the Matha High School alumni.
Well, maybe they deserve some happiness.
Well, that's what I mean. It's like karma, right? They were like, they lost on a Caleb Williams Hail Mary in high school, and now they're all, I'm sure they're all Washington Commanders fans. They're all, they're from DC. I'm sure some were probably at the game last night, and to see the Commanders beat Caleb on a Hail Mary must have been cathartic for them. So there's that. It's like poetry, it rhymes, to quote George
Absolutely.
Lucas.
Yes.
Well, one more football thing, and then we can kind of move it. This is our segue to like more nerdy shit, and maybe we'll talk a little politics. Is that I don't know if you caught your girl AOC and Governor Tim Walz playing Madden over Twitch
Madden
yesterday.
Yeah, I saw that. I didn't look into the details of who they were playing or who was doing well. I'd be more curious what football team AOC plays.
She picked the Bills. Interestingly, not the Giants or
the other New York team that's not.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
You can't pick the Jets because of Aaron Rodgers.
And
you can't pick the Giants because they suck.
They just suck. Maybe she has one of those composite teams in her dream teams she made the custom made. I don't know. Because I assume we know which team Walz played for.
Yeah, but it was Bills Vikings. Vikings.
Yeah, but the point is that's totally rad because again, I'm not even good at Madden, but like that's a great social thing to do that real young fun people do that that touches my heart. It's another reason both Tim Walz and AOC are excellent in my book.
Yeah, and I'll just get out of the way. There's been some conversation, not to put our internal conversations out there, and we haven't made a decision whether we'll do this as a publication or not. But I'll just say, as here on the podcast, as one of the brains behind the Nerds of Color, I am full-throatedly endorsing Kamala Harris for president. I think it's obvious you are. I mean, we've talked about it, ad nauseum on the podcast. You've written a beautiful post on the site talking about why you're geeked to vote for Kamala. And I think it's an easy choice, particularly, again, when you see the alternative.
Yes.
It's ones and zeros, you guys. It's a binary choice. You're either picking the one or you're picking the zero.
Yeah, and people don't like binary choices these days, but that's what we've got.
But you can't help it. Like, I mean, and this is I think there's a lot of controversy the last week or so around certain newspapers not picking an endorsement and some of the reasonings behind it. And I'm saying straight up, like, you have to fully support Kamala Harris, even if you're not in a swing state. And this is my pitch to why, even if you live in a safe state like California, or in my case, Maryland or New York, to beat Trumpism, we have to beat it overwhelmingly.
Sure.
If it comes down to 60,000 votes in 3 states, Trumpism isn't going away, even if Trump does. It has to be a landslide. And that means the popular vote needs to be overwhelming.
Yeah.
There's no like throwing your vote away in this election.
Yeah, I agree. And I also endorse Kamala Harris. And I take that point in excuse me. I mean, yes, in a sense, the most important thing for me and for a lot of people in this exact election cycle is to try to make this Trumpism thing go away. Obviously, it's our third election with this crew of nimrods.
The rogues gallery.
So obviously they have this ability to ebb and flow and keep thinking that they're the movement that's building. There are many important issues that one can vote on and base your voting decision around, obviously. For a lot of people, it's the one that trumps all is that Trump does not win.
Yeah.
And yes, and just to pick up on, it'd be really good if it was very decisive, because they keep pulling this thing where like you don't see what you see, and that win is not a win unless it's our win, blah blah blah. A vote that was so decisive that it became that let people know that this whole Trumpism, MAGAism thing is actually not cool at all and just gonna fade away as an unfortunate phase, would enable us to get back to progressing to other parts of of uh, of America that are super important.
Yeah, and and I get like the critique from the left, because I don't even think it's a matter of like worrying about, well, what will people on the far right think? I don't give a shit what they think. We know what they think. It was on display in Madison Square Garden last night. And again, more reason for me to hate the Knicks. Not that the Knicks had anything to do with that, but the Knicks and Madison Square Garden are the same organization. So I'll just leave it there. So all you Knicks fans are also complicit. And again, I hate all New York teams. Sorry. I just lost the support of a couple people in our audience, I'm sure. But I will say that like it's not even about like splitting your ticket. Like, Democrats are probably going to lose the Senate, and that's going to suck, even if Harris wins the presidency.
Yeah.
We might flip the House. I mean, again, speaking of the Madison Square Garden thing, maybe some of these like New York districts that were like on the, precipice might actually go blue again because he just pissed off all the Puerto Ricans in New York. So it's like,
yeah, it was a terrible thing to say. All the freaking MAGA numbskulls.
But I'm just saying, whatever your cause is, and I understand, particularly folks on the left, if your cause is Gaza, if your cause is the end of capitalism, if your cause is, a myriad things that are very important, understand if Trump is president, none of that stuff is getting fixed. And you don't even have the space to argue for it in a Trump second term.
Yeah, absolutely not. We'll just be barraged with stupid racism every single day. That's just what's going to happen if Trump wins. It's not like he's got the alternate plan that is better than the Democrats' plan. He has no plan. There's going to be racism every single day. Not that there isn't some racism already every single day.
Yeah, but it'll be like enacted upon.
Yeah, it'll be active,
and codified into law.
Yeah, and I've said some version of this before, but like my take on it has boiled down to like a simple piece of advice, which is don't vote for Trump. Do anything but vote for Trump. Doesn't mean you have to vote for Kamala. And I understand people think like, oh, well, I have to not voting for Kamala is like a vote for Trump, because yes, you could look at it that way. In my very simplified version of the message, just don't vote for Trump, because there's a flip side where people are people are like, oh, I'm opposed to Kamala. That means I have to vote for Trump, huh? To like express my opposition. No, definitely don't do that. If you're opposed to Kamala, don't vote. That's fine. I mean, I'm saying a sort of radically stupid inversion of your message, which is yes.
I know. Wait, listen to me, don't listen to Dominic. Is that what we're saying? Or listen to Dominic, don't listen to me.
I'm presenting it for argument, because
like if you can't bring yourself
the thing you said is very true. Everyone go out and vote, even if you're in not a swing state. Go out and vote. Go out and vote. Go out and vote. Please. It's a privilege of being an American democracy. And my asterisk, which you can choose to listen to or not, is except if you're gonna vote for Trump, skip it. Just
or if you're gonna vote for Trump, do it on January 5th, like you said. He told people vote on January 5th, and I think that's right.
That's great. Does that mean is that his like not so subtle, like let's go have a
no? I think that's his like addled brain not understanding how words work.
Yeah, I don't know. I that doesn't mean it's a bunch of like a new storming of the.
Oh, I'm sure they'll find different capitals to storm.
Anyway, yeah. Anyway.
So but no, but seriously, like I see your point, and if you're not going to vote for Kamala, but I think that's why I think our message, the people who listen to this podcast, the people who read our site, are not going to vote for Trump. And my pitch to them to vote for Kamala is, again, the overwhelming force of the vote and the support behind her. Because
that's a good way of thinking about it. I get you.
And I also say a vote for Kamala does not mean it ends at the election day.
Yeah.
You vote for Kamala because you can protest Kamala. Yeah. You can push Kamala for the policies you want.
Yeah.
That's why you vote for Kamala. That's not, you don't vote for Cornel West or Jill Stein. You vote for Kamala because you can tell Kamala this is what we want. Can't do that with Donald Trump. I'm just saying that's, and if your goal is the complete, burn all the shit down. Like there's a certain aspect of the left that also wants to see it burned down.
Yeah.
That's probably why there's the horseshoe theory comes into play, where it's like,
yeah,
there's a reason, there's like anarchists who just want all of it burned down. And I understand the compulsion. I just don't think, practically that has any.
But then the principal thing would be to not vote. In the version,
don't participate in the system if you don't.
Yeah,
want
the version of burn the shit down and I'm gonna vote for Trump is insane and idiotic. Just that's the one.
Because that'll just that'll
voting for the system. And
no, but I think the thinking is that if you do so, it'll accelerate the
okay, it's an accelerant to the fire, which you supposedly want, even though you probably actually enjoy the shelter that is over your head right now. Okay. I'd like to say something else, which is like, I've been reading discourse lately, and I don't mean like stupid internet discourse. I mean real well-intended conversation discourse from the point of view that is like, let's not get like really, really upset and anxious about everything because we survived the Trump election. We had it wasn't the end of the world. It's basically the point of view that like it's not the end of the world. Okay, let's chill, and one side will win and one side will lose, and we'll try to coexist as Americans. And I like parts of that concept, but it is different. The moment is different because, I mean, looking back in the long view, since 2016, I don't think I'm alone in thinking that there's a special change happened where did like 30% of people you knew lost their damn minds. Do you know what I'm saying? A lot of us had experience that like roughly 30% of people you knew and coexisted with in some way lost their minds. And probably they would say the others, the right wing would say with some version of the same thing. And this is where I get to pull the age card, because like, it's not like a millennial person going like, oh, this is, just another election, or how could it be? I've lived long enough to see the different versions of what stability as far as sustaining American democracy is like. Versus
not
versus versus our democratic system, which is a great privilege, is like being thought of as like, oh, maybe let's try not that for a while. That's real fucked up. And I, in the best case, yeah, and an overwhelming push against this terrible racist MAGAism will, throw that back into the ash heap of just an unfortunate phase, like when the Klan had a rally in Madison Square Garden, those couple times they did back in the day.
Yeah. Thank God that never happens again.
Yeah. So,
well, I want to take this opportunity to kind of like shout out our old friend, our old co-host, Sean Taylor, because he predicted this years ago. It's his whole like academic project to talk about how the rise of Trumpism and the rise of this particular like nihilistic version of the right wing kind of coincides with like the embodiment or empowerment of toxic fandom.
Sure.
And you can trace a lot of like Trumpist kind of just like tactics to Gamergate and Comicsgate.
Yes.
And the reaction to things like Ghostbusters or Last Jedi.
Yes.
And it's funny that recently, I think this weekend, that old curmudgeon Alan Moore wrote a piece, an op-ed, saying toxic fandom is the reason we have things like Trump.
Ah. I actually didn't read it. Can you summarize like what pieces
That's
did he
no, that's
discuss
I mean,
as example?
everything Sean's been saying for years is what,
Yeah,
like, Alan Moore, and Alan Moore is the great, writer of Watchmen and
Killing Joke.
um, the Swamp Thing,
Hmm.
and so many classic comics. And he's also famously a curmudgeon, so it's like
A famous weirdo. Yeah.
he's also a weirdo. But and he basically says, like, there's a place for fandom, and we talked about in any situation, whether it's music or comics or sports, there's a place to, like, enjoy the thing to a passion, but there's a turn where it becomes entitlement and,
Yes.
you know what, kind of capturing this nostalgia for something that never really existed. Make
Yeah.
America great again. It's not that far off from, like, a lot of, like, nostalgia bait that you can see even in my background here, where I have all these toys from when I was a kid, right? Like,
Hmm.
it's not that separated. And I think where it gets tricky is when people start pandering to that sense of nostalgia and listening to fans wanting a certain, like, I've come to a point where, like, I don't want people to listen to the fans. That used to be a thing. Like, you need to
Hmm.
listen to the fans.
Hmm.
You know what? Don't listen to the fans.
It's become different. Yeah. It's become
Because,
way
I don't
different.
know, a few months ago there was a story about how, like, studios like Warner Brothers and Disney are creating these, like, fan focus groups
Hmm.
to be like, we're going to consult with them to make sure we don't, like, step on anyone's feet.
Right. You know who's
And
going to
it's
sign
like,
up for those.
yeah,
Right?
don't do that. How about
Yeah.
don't do that?
Yeah. But I'm curious because I didn't read the piece. Which pieces did Alan Moore cite as examples, or what kind of like
Oh, you're going to
Watchmen?
make me actually.
Watchmen is an interesting. Well, I mean, I assume he wasn't talking complete generalities. The fandom of Watchmen is interesting. Watchmen is an interesting case. The fandom of Killing Joke is an interesting case. I'm just curious, guy. It's not the biggest deal in the world. I just wonder if there was a case study that.
Yeah, it's no. Let me try to pull some quotes that I think is relevant. And here, so the last paragraph, Alan Moore says, an enthusiasm that is fertile and productive can enrich life and society, just as displacing personal frustrations into venomous tirades about your boyhood hobby can devalue them. Quite liking something is okay. You don't need the machete or the megaphone.
Hmm.
Candidly, for my part, readers would have always been more than sufficient. Readers as opposed to fans. Like, that's
Yeah,
what Alan
readers as
Moore
opposed
was.
to fans. I get
So
it.
so, like, I mean, specific examples of fans going too far. I don't think, does he
Well,
cite anything
maybe he
specific?
didn't for the purposes of make. He could also not have done that and spoke generally just for purposes of making it broadly appeal. I get that. I just want to say all that because like his most famous text, Watchmen, is an interesting case of that, and the HBO version of it really explored what would happen if the fans of Rorschach like went way too far and missed the message. Even though, as we know, AOC also quotes Rorschach now and then. So the particular excellence of the HBO series was how it really played out the strings of the extreme fandoms for all the various members of the Watchmen in their most to their most dire possible outcome, and that
Well,
was
I think
it was
it's
that.
possible more
And he
is,
probably hated it, but it did
well,
that
so I was going to say, I think
effectively.
Moore doesn't specifically call out a particular quote unquote intellectual property, but I think he does call out comics fans. Let me read another excerpt from his
Hmm.
op-ed. Uh, when I looked back after an internet and some few decades, fandom was a very different animal. An older animal, for one thing, with a median age in its late 40s, fed presumably by nostalgia that its energetic predecessor was too young to suffer from. And while the vulgar comic story was originally proffered solely to the working classes, soaring retail prices had precluded any audience save for the more affluent, had gentrified a previously bustling, lively cultural slum neighborhood. This boost in fandom's age and status possibly explains its current sense of privilege, its
Mm.
tendency to carp and cavil rather than contribute or create. I
He
speak
really
only of
loves that
comics fandom.
alliteration that Alan
Yeah, well,
Moore
he is
has.
Alan Moore.
Yeah,
And he speaks only of comics fandom here,
yeah.
but have gained the impression that this reflexive belligerence, most usually from middle aged white male conservatives, is now part of many fan communities. My 14-year-old grandson tells me older Pokemon aficionados can display the same febrile disgruntlement. So
Hmm.
he's calling out comics fandom
Yeah.
specifically, but I think, again, the thesis of Sean's, research has always been how, particularly aggrieved white male conservatives who see a changing society. I wouldn't just say country because Alan Moore is, British, but they see a changing society, and rather than adapting to that changing society, recoil. And those are the grievances that Trump and the right play on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you brought up the specifically comic book aspect. I was thinking about this the other day, like literal comics have become hard to access in a way because they're freaking $5 or $6 now each one. Like that thing when I was growing up 1,000 years ago, you could walk in and get like 3 comics, and it ranged from like, several dollars. One comic book today is like $5 or $6. Obviously, that is a choice and a barrier for a lot of people growing up who would prefer to get it, free on the internet somehow, which you can. So that's just interesting to me.
And I think there is something to be said about like as a guy in his 40s who likes superheroes, I have been catered to for the last 20 years.
We have, yes.
And you know what? I'm fine not being catered to anymore. It's kind of why
Well, don't go too far.
Well, no, and I feel, and I was actually having this conversation with Jamie Noguchi over the weekend. We were having coffee, and I was like, we were having this exact conversation. I was saying like, oh, I'm kind of like prepping for a podcast. I feel like, and here we are. Now I'm putting it out into the world.
Great.
But I kind of feel like a contrarian fan sometimes because like we talked about Deadpool and Wolverine. I didn't like it. And I think I didn't like it because it was like too catered to someone in my, demographic.
Yeah.
And that's precisely why
or
I
what they
like
think that person is.
Right. Well, and clearly it was because you saw the reaction from most fans.
Yeah.
And similarly, and you and I haven't had a chance to talk about this, I liked Joker Folie à Deux for the same reason. That it was specifically not targeted to my demographic. Todd Phillips was essentially saying, to your point about Watchmen, all of you people who watched that first movie and took this message from it, I'm going to make this second movie a complete flip of that. Yeah. And in fact, 60% of the movie is a trial of the first movie, like literal trial of the first movie.
Okay.
And I appreciated it. I'm one of the few. Like, there's like 3 people in the world who actually appreciated Joker 2. I'm one of them.
Well, that's great. I mean, I haven't seen it, so I've listened to the soundtrack album. But yeah, no, you have that contrarian aspect in your fandom, which is part of
Well, and I wonder, is that just something? Where is it coming from? Though, where is that contrarianism? Because I'm not being a contrarian just to be a contrarian. Like, I do feel like people are kind of catering to fandoms too much, and that you saw this in the reaction to, like, again, something like Ghostbusters, who was like, Paul Feig was saying, I don't want to redo the first movie. I don't want to make a sequel. I want to take, because that used to be a thing where you take inspiration from a thing and you interpret it in your way. And we've become beholden to like continuity and, canon and like, the things that nerds used to like obsess over. And I just feel like, the detriment of a lot of things now, because now artists aren't free to do things that they want.
It's weird, and it became like it passed the point for me when like we started using the phrase, we're getting Clea in the Doctor Strange movie. Oh, we're finally getting Black Lightning. Oh, we're finally getting Deadpool and Wolverine. That's just like entitled use of language that signaled something.
Or like a great example when Disney bought Fox, and like instead of thinking about the hundreds of thousands of workers who are going to lose their jobs, it was like, oh, the X-Men can be in a Marvel movie now.
Right. There's that aspect too. And like it's somehow the point is, our exact satisfaction of our exact fan fiction in our heads, and like repeated because they've actually hit that mark several times, and they So I don't know, it becomes like a drug addiction model. I know they're
I
trying.
mean, where do you
like,
think it turned? Because like I think to your point, like one of the exciting things as a longtime fan, we've been in this for we're both, again, as I said, in our 40s and have been fans as long as we can remember.
Mm-hmm.
Where did it turn? At least in the sense that like would things like the Marvel universe and adapting stories that we all love and then turning into its own thing and appreciating it to like feeling that they were getting too bogged down by like what fans want rather than telling good stories.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it turned at one specific point. I have to think about that a little bit. But do you mean in the sense of in the recent phase, like I'm saying, like within the last 4 years of the MCU, when it became clear that they were having like uh a little excessive fan servicey interactions? I mean, they had those before, but they were more artfully executed. Are you talking about, would
I
it
mean, I
be
don't
in
know.
that
I mean,
would it be in
I
that
think
time
more
period,
like,
do you think? Or
I mean, I feel like maybe what I'm asking is like, to me, I kind of pinpoint two things,
sure.
and it's the rise of Skywalker and the
Mm-hmm.
Snyder Cut.
Okay. Yeah. Very
As
significant.
like, and I say this as someone who actually like, at the end of the day, thought the Snyder Cut was a better movie than the Joss
Yeah.
Whedon
Yeah.
Justice League. Not, but I don't. But what I don't agree with was how it came about.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
Okay.
mean? Like there was like, and not to say all Snyder fans were toxic fans, but there was clearly a overwhelming social media. Oh no, you know what the term? The term was social media, I think, but that's another story.
Right.
But you know
Okay.
what I mean. So like, but I think Snyder Cut showed like giving in to fan demands was profitable.
Yes, that was a very clear line of this hashtag made this entitled thing happen. Also,
Because
of
I would,
course, also because there's a pandemic and we were in the mood for 7 hour content. Let's
well,
not
and here's the thing, like I
like
think it
lose
would have
that
been,
part of
and
it.
if I would thought it again, where I think the Snyder Cut people like cross the line is that like, give us a Snyder Cut, give us a Snyder Cut, give us this. Okay, here's the Snyder Cut. Awesome, restore the Snyderverse, restore the Snyder. It was and that's I think the lesson about giving into fans is that you can't give them what they want because it's give a mouse a cookie. You remember that story from childhood?
Sure,
If you
sure.
give a mouse a cookie, he'll want a glass of milk. You can't just give the fans what they want because they'll always never be satisfied.
Well, you can. It's just like you're framing it the wrong way. You can keep doing that, but yes, they'll never be satisfied. The fan seeking satisfaction is the deluded one. The fan will never be happy.
Right.
You can keep giving them anything you want. They'll keep wanting something else, and that's ultimately is the fan's problem. And the fan working through that need and entitlement in themselves is, well, how we would get to the satisfaction of that person who is the fan in theory. Um,
Yeah.
and
And so, but that leads
okay,
to
yeah,
like, but then who or should they be listening to? Because like Rise of Skywalker, the other example I use, because that was clearly a movie made in reaction to the fan reactions of Last Jedi. Oh, you
right,
guys hate Kelly Marie Tran? We're not going to put her in this movie.
right,
You guys want this, that, and the other thing. We're going to give you everything you want, and please no one.
right. And in that
Because
case, yeah, that
Ryan
case it
Johnson's
was
greatest
especially
sin was
right.
trying to
Yeah,
do something different with Star Wars.
yeah. And it ended up being like uh the reaction was it just excessively like racist and like looksist, uh more than some other extreme fan reactions. And so that was really too bad, especially because that other Star Wars 9 script was really good and they should have made that one.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
but yeah, and also yeah, and please no one, because The Rise of Skywalker was mediocre.
And no one likes it. Like the fans you're trying to like cater to
Yeah.
hate it as much as the fans that you've completely, And I
Right.
think
And the
again
thing
goes.
they ended up with didn't really try to be anything. It was just trying to navigate a bunch of fan landmine reactions.
Yeah.
It didn't even try to be anything in itself. It was just like a compilation of fanfic moments.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and that's the
I
thing
think.
too. Like I think we've forgotten. Like fan fiction was a thing because that was like it took something that was good and pure and corrupted it, right? Because like fan fiction exists because, to your point, fans aren't satisfied with what they get, so they are able to utilize their imagination to, like, if I was the creator of the universe, I would have done it this way, and that's totally fine. That's part of being a fan.
Mm-hmm.
I think what
Yeah.
happens is that when it's the, like Stephen King called this 40 years ago with Misery, like when the fan doesn't get what they want, they turn violent. you know,
Yeah,
emotionally violent.
Yeah,
They're not kidnapping anyone and any showrunner and sticking them in their house, but that was the point of Misery was Stephen King saying, like, hey, like, artists have a right to art the way they want, and consume it however you want, but no one is entitled to a certain thing.
Yeah, it's funny. In some cases, I think it's interesting just thinking of fans as people who maybe they don't have a creative outlet as much themselves, and they sort of vicariously enjoy arts through consuming arts, which is how you do. So, and I just believe that everyone should have access to a creative outlet, and first, just as a personal spiritual thing for people, and and for some and for some people, like, their version of that is heavy investment in the movie series that I really follow, and they want it to be a certain way, and because, like, maybe because they aren't quite in touch with their means of creativity in themselves, because they could be writing fanfic but haven't, then something gets stopped up, and it becomes well, potentially just violence and aggro, but also just really, really repetitive because they haven't figured out a creative way to protest for what they want. So it's like the same hashtag every day. Anyway, and I do not have any version.
Well, I wonder, here's
problem,
a turn. I wasn't expecting to make this, but I just started thinking of it because we started this conversation talking about sports.
Yes.
And, like, for the most part, sports is something that can be toxic. And the way you go about, like, I was jokingly referring to the Yankees and the Dodgers as, shit organizations that no one should cheer for. But I don't mean that. Like, I'm not going to go and, like, if I find out you're a Yankees fan or I find out you're a Dodgers fan, and just, like, berate you, until you call the cops. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's part of the fun of being a sports fan is to hate, quote unquote, the other side. But at the end of the day, you're not really out to get them. But what I feel is, like, in these other spaces, and like comics fandom, movie fandom, even like pop star fandom, where you get really behind your favorite artist and you shit on someone else and their fans.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't have the balance of also being a sports fan and understanding how that works.
No, 100%. Being a sports fandom trains you for that kind of thing. And that's why I would call for that balance. And people are fans of anything. That's 100%. You understand that occasionally you're going to lose. You might learn that lesson as a child at a young age, but it's formative. One time I, like, cried for a whole afternoon because the Giants lost some game that I really wanted them to win. San Francisco baseball Giants, I'm saying.
Yeah. I'm going through that right now.
It does recur. It's not like you ever get over it, but you have this understanding. Imagine a world where the Bears versus Commanders game was like, the X-Men versus Avengers movie, and there wasn't ever going to be another one, and it came out, had a shitty outcome. You're like, oh God, I've been wronged. My life is over. There's going to be another game next week.
Right.
There's
right.
There's a chance to process the loss and even hope for the next outcome, which is how the sports fandom works.
That's a great point, because, like, the utter, like, disappointment when your team loses is quickly followed by hope, because next week there's another game or there's another season that you can look forward to. One day we'll go all the way.
Yeah, that's where the athletic model is a lot superior to, the comic book fandom model, or at least they would do well to adapt things from each other.
And that, I think you've just explained, the thesis for why we've done the pod the way we've done the last couple months. Yeah, so I'm sure a lot of people who are like who are in the Nerds of Color space are not quite sports people, and hate the fact that we spend the first 20 minutes talking about sports always now.
Yeah, a lot of the nerds define themselves as being opposed to sports for, perfectly good reason. We happen to be in the section that likes both sports and superhero movies, and a lot of people, of course, on the sports sides would cheerfully denigrate everything that smacks of superheroes or nerds, except the actual athletes who know that they are.
And that's the thing. I don't even think so. I think a lot of jocks,
I mean, it used to be.
Yeah, well, that's the stereotype, jocks stuffing nerds in lockers. But I think that's the thing. Like, there's so much crossover between jocks and nerds now that it's not like unheard of for professional athletes to be super into the same nerdy shit we're into, and more so because of the generation that are athletes now all grew up on comics and comics in the mainstream, anime and manga in the mainstream.
Absolutely.
There's not even the divide anymore. So
yeah. And
why can't we all just be happy nerds? I think is the
I mean, first of all, we can become healthier and just more functional fans of things in sports, in movies, and comic books. There's a process to work on that can't, it can be worked on. It's not just locked in to whatever you are right now. It's I like to think. Do you want now pivoting a bit? There's also there's also music fandom, which does both things. People are open-minded, and then people are territorial about it.
Yeah.
Did you happen to listen to the recent project from Lin-Manuel Miranda and many others?
I am a Lin stan. I ride hard for Lin-Manuel Miranda, and if he were to ever engage in some sort of battle with another, musical theater hip hop artist, I would be on Team Lin. So yeah, I did listen to Warriors. I will say I am not super familiar with the movie. I will admit it's in my pop culture blind spot. I know, of it. I know the famous phrases from it. I know roughly what it's about. I don't think I've ever sat down and watched the entire movie. So
yeah, I think I'm the same. I think I've seen bits of it.
Yeah. So listening to Warriors was actually a new thing, and realizing, oh, this is like a gender swapped version of the original.
Yeah, and right? I don't even know it well, the Warriors the movie well enough to know.
You only know it because the oblique references to your favorite basketball team.
There are many oblique references that involve the Warriors the movie. Yes,
even though that's the Bay and not New York, but
but Dodgers, Giants, New York, San Francisco. It's all part of a big karmic web.
What did you think of Warriors? I mean, it's going to take me a few listens to really get into it because, again, not being familiar with the source material, I had a passing familiarity with Alexander Hamilton and Revolutionary War history to know what he was talking about. I'll have to revisit Warriors a few times before I fully say it's up there with Hamilton and In the Heights. But what did you think of Warriors?
Well, I haven't listened to the whole thing either. It just came out last week, right? So The Warriors is a concept album based on the movie, headed up by Lin-Manuel Miranda, but produced by Nas, really all-star. Lauryn Hill sings on the track. Nas and the other guy, many other guys. I'm
Busta Rhymes on it.
Busta Rhymes. It's freaking all-star, and so it's whereas Hamilton was like a sort of hip-hoppy Broadway musical theater. This is crossing over more to we could say.
Although Questlove was involved with the production of the album.
Okay, right on. No, I'm not trying to.
I
don't want to get into what's real hip hop
fandom fight over Hamilton.
I don't want to get into what's real hip hop or not real hip hop based on what names, because I'll lose. Everyone loses that battle, but I especially lose it. But what I want to say is, it's a concept album. It's not attached to a specific piece of
right. There is no Warriors show yet. It's just an album right now.
Yeah, it's a concept album, and concept albums are having a little resurgence right now. And I'll just mention, I'm also making a concept album, so that's why it's all to at the top of my brain. Because I don't know where your position on concept albums was. They're a little bit, at some point they're thought of as like a stunt associated with the Who's Tommy or like kitschy things like that. But attached to Joker 2, All I Do was Harley Quinn.
Harlequin.
Yes, I meant Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn themed concept album, and this is and Warriors is a concept album by design. And I'm making an indie album, which is like a concept album based on superhero comic book tropes. So I just like to think there's some kind of move for albums swelling up again and again. At this point, you could almost say like albums in themselves are concept albums, because people aren't really like attached to like.
I was
almost
about to
every
say,
album
like,
is a
I think
concept album,
like, you know, for like the folks listening to us who are like super young, and I don't know how many of you are out there who are young,
Right.
Gen Zers who are listening to this, but like an album is a collection of songs
right,
that are thematically tied somehow. A concept album is when that theme is overt.
right. So yes, so maybe through the current lens, any album is a collection of songs where the concept is the songs go together for some reason, right? Because
And yet no
albums,
one will listen to an album from like beginning to end. They'll still shuffle it in their playlist, you know?
right. So, but imagine a world where, yes, the songs overtly tie together a story or a theme more so than, even the last, like, the Taylor Swift album has themes, and
Is it a concept album?
some of them I would argue verge towards concept album more than others. This is a fine point. Yeah, like some Beyonce, like I feel like Lemonade was more a concept album than the other one. And you could argue that
Cowboy
the
Carter.
Western motif is a concept. Anyway,
No, I mean, I thought you were going to go Cowboy
but,
Carter over
yeah.
Lemonade, because Cowboy Carter to me is a concept album. It's
Sure,
reclaiming country music for Black people. You know, well, I was going to ask you, what is your favorite concept album? Do you have one?
Oh, well, I don't know about my favorite, but I'm gonna go back to Batman's Prince's Batman soundtrack.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely more concept album than soundtrack, because though
Yes,
like bits and pieces of those songs are in the movie, it's not as traditional soundtrack, and especially in an '80s, continuum where like soundtracks were like a collection of pop songs that are heavily featured in the movie.
right.
Prince wrote, I mean, that's why I always argue, and Prince fans hate me for it, that Batman is my favorite Prince album. It's not just my favorite concept, it's my favorite Prince album because it's the one. I was 12 when it came out, so I wasn't huge into Prince.
Yeah,
But that was the first album that hooked me. And being
totally.
a Batman
And
guy.
the Batman idea is inseparable from that album, and that's what makes it definitively a concept album.
Yeah.
It doesn't
And then
make it
like
doesn't make
his Gemini
sense
character
without Batman stuff. But
his
it is,
Gemini
yeah,
character is the what ties so he came up with this character named Gemini, which was like half Batman, half Joker.
yeah.
That's in all the videos. But that is what like kind of the through line through all the songs. That you can also tell, and I know this like in my later years going back and listening to, I still love that album, but you can tell a lot of those songs are like castaways from other albums.
Oh, totally.
Like
Yeah,
Vicky Waiting
reworked
is
them,
a Darling Nikki sequel.
yeah,
He just
absolutely.
changed Nikki to Vicky,
Yeah.
and it's
But
all
that's okay because you repurpose things to give them added meaning from the super text, which is in this case the superhero movie.
yeah.
Um, and
Mine
yes,
is
I think it's
Rhythm
important
Nation.
influence.
Rhythm Nation is my favorite
Yeah,
concept album.
there you go. An excellent concept album.
Yeah.
It has that whole kind of sort of super what do you call it, like a steampunk future narrative going supported by the videos,
Yeah.
right?
And then to your point, like all the songs, like there is a through, like to me, a great concept album, you have to listen beginning to end. You can't,
Ideally, yeah.
but the songs still work on their own, right? Like because they're still 3-4 minute pop song, but like to get the full impact, it's like a musical theater production. The story's told in a linear fashion, and I feel like the Rhythm Nation does that.
Yeah, and
really
in theory,
well. And the videos help.
Yeah,
the videos help.
Well, yeah, but yeah, even with like making movie-like videos was very much the move at the time. But yeah, in theory, there's a cohesive through line throughout all of Rhythm Nation that gets you through an A B C experience, which is more powerful than listening to the songs individually. Although the songs individually are cool in their way. That's what's cool about a concept album: little pieces of pie and also the whole pie. Win-win. I mean, so I had to throw things out there to say, and also at some point, either at the beginning or the end of this podcast, we'll play this song I wrote for the Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, which is not superhero related, which is
Perfect button on this episode, though. I think.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of an outlier in the concept, and yet thematically it relates in certain ways. Um, and because it's only a freaking week away, I imagine we'll podcast again
Yeah,
on
we'll
this
see.
other
We'll see.
side of this.
We'll maybe we'll try to do one pre and post. We'll see like
Yeah.
what the state of the world is.
Yeah. Also with the caveat that we realize this isn't like going to be resolved on November 5th.
Right. I think that's
likely.
something we have to steel ourselves for sure.
Yeah. Maybe in a
well,
weird
before we wrap, and while we're on the topic of concept albums, I do want to stress that my current favorite, I think he's considered a concept album. I've talked a lot on this podcast about one of my favorite current music groups is this Japanese group called Atarashi Gakko.
Yeah.
They recently toured. I saw them in DC a couple weeks ago. They're phenomenal, but their most recent album, AG Calling, is kind of like a concept album. And there's a lot of like, you were talking about how 12 Valentines is kind of superhero themed. There's a bit of a hero theme throughout their album. And they have a song called Superhuman. They have a song called The Hero Show, Tokyo Calling, which was like their probably biggest crossover hit. Is kind of this like kaiju inspired. The video is very kaiju inspired. So that's another concept album I just wanted to put out there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you got to see that show. I was surprised that they're touring this side, huh? Are they doing a lot of dates or not very many?
Yeah, they finished the world tour, so now they're going to be touring Japan pretty soon, but they did this massive like Europe, North America tour. They're blowing up. They're getting big.
And of course, they did songs for Ghostbusters and the Suicide Squad anime, so
yeah,
they're kind of like the Kenny Loggins of modern superhero movie themes.
They're definitely blowing up, and I'm proud of them for doing that. So yeah, that's speaking of Ghostbusters, we kind of like did a nerd popping segment. I guess Warriors is what's nerd popping for you, and
I wanted to mention it
for me. I've been debating whether or not I want to drop 300, 400, nearly $400 on a 6-inch scale Ecto 1 that they revealed at New York Comic Con. So it's like it's for your action figures. So it's like the car itself is like 30 inches long. It's a huge fucking thing. And Hasbro announced it at New York Comic Con, and it's one of their like crowdfunding things. And there's like, do I want to? Because what's cool about the $400 one is that it comes with like 6 figures and
comes with 6 figures.
Yeah, wow. All 4 Ghostbusters, Slimer, and the Library Ghost. And it's got a convertible. You can convert it from Ecto 1 from the first movie to Ecto 1A from the second movie. And you know how much I ride for Ghostbusters 2.
Wow. Okay. Oh, that would be super neat.
Because you can get the base version, which is just Ecto 1 with Slimer and the Library Ghost for like $325. But for an extra $75, you get all 4 Ghostbusters. If they threw in a Bobby Brown figure, it would have been a no-brainer.
Oh my God, they totally should have a Bobby Brown figure. Jesus, and the thing could you could press a button and the song would play. I think you should wait. I think you should wait for them to make that version. But
that needs to be if that's an unlock. If that's a tier unlock, yeah, for sure, I will.
That is a tier that should exist. That's funny because I remember sometimes you wanted the carrier vehicle to sort of organize your concept of the figures you already had. I think don't you already have some of those Ghostbuster figures, or do you want to get them all in one team?
Well, I have. You can see right there. I have the 4 from the first movie.
I'm
pointing kind of. For those of you who are,
I can't see them from here.
Yeah, I know.
No one can see them. Have a camera inside Keith's house.
This is also an audio-only podcast, so no one is seeing what I'm pointing at. But I'm pointing at Hasbro's Ghostbusters Plasma Series figures, who are on top of that show. So if I got just the base car, I could just use them, and it would just be the first movie.
Yeah. Okay. Right? So the ones that come with the car are what?
In their Ghostbusters 2, in their Ghostbusters 2 uniforms.
Okay.
So they have the slime blowers.
Okay.
And Winston doesn't have facial hair because he's shaved for the second movie. And then I mean, real Ghostbusters nerd shit here.
Please,
But-
someone chime in if you have a strong opinion on whether Keith should do this.
How should Keith spend his money?
I would love to know what strong opinions on this are like.
Well, because this weekend I'm selling a bunch of toys at the Maryland Toy Fair, toy show here in Maryland this weekend. So if anyone is listening is in Maryland, you want to stop by the Timonium Fairgrounds in Baltimore, Maryland, I will be selling a bunch of toys to potentially pay for this thing if I do end up.
That's how it works, right, man? And the thing's it's gonna be like an aircraft carrier. That thing.
It's going to be huge, and I have nowhere to put it, and I'll end up probably selling that at the next toy show if I do.
Interesting cycles.
It's more like it's
Sports,
just kind of like
action figure reselling.
Yeah, I don't know why I do what I do. It's a problem.
You're the best. There's it. What you do. Just what you do isn't very nice.
Anyway,
were you true Wolverine fans out there?
That's Hard Knock for this. I mean, I won't even say this week. I don't know, to your point, like when we'll podcast again. It's been several weeks since we podcasted last. If you're wondering about the gap in the numbering, there was a lost episode that was recorded at some point we won't talk about. But
it is truly nerdy that you care about the gap of numbering people.
Hey, it's all about continuity and canon.
Yeah, okay. I'd like to meet the person who actually cares about our schedule at all. The point is, we have these episodes sometimes, and sometimes we don't.
Yeah,
it's precious.
That's how it goes.
That you're keeping track. Anyway.
Well, I kind of have to because I'm the guy who uploads them.
Yes, you do. You do.
And if anything, it bothers me that there's this gap. But anyway.
Well, maybe okay. We'll release that somehow.
Maybe. I don't know if we can, but I'm just building the mystery.
That's good.
To paraphrase Sarah McLachlan.
Good.
Dominic, how can people find you on the internet?
Oh, I'm Dama, DOMMAH on most of the socials. And please find my indie music group, 12 Valentines, on Spotify or Bandcamp or all the streamer places.
You can follow the Nerds of Color at the Nerds of Color on every platform. Go to youtube.com/nerds of color to see our videos, except this, because this won't be a video. This is just an audio. If you want to find our audio podcast, we are on Apple Podcasts and all of your favorite podcasting platforms. Give us a like and a review and a comment and tell people to listen to the podcast, even if we don't record on a regular basis. That's the show. Until next time, Dominic, do you want to throw it to your song?
Here's a song we did as 12 Valentines. It's called November Stanza, and it really just came out of I wanted to do some song that's related to the Harris Walz moment. Now I realize the moment's got more complicated, and I was harkening back to when in 2008 will.i.am had that sort of catchy Yes We Can speech/song with Scarlett Johansson looking moody and black and white or whatever. It's interesting to me. I think we've moved on, as a people, as a society, that's like people aren't, that's not as in favor anymore, probably because it's considered sappy. I'm still a sap in many of those ways, so I wanted to have a song like that. There are indie songs related to the current election, but they're mainly like jokey songs about eating cats and dogs or something, or mocking Trump's stupidity. And yes, I realize it's complicated on many levels. I'm excited about Kamala Harris as a Black Asian American woman president, a Blasian president. Haven't had any of those things before. We need to get started. I realize it's way more complex than that, but it's also not, because we've had Donald Trump before, and why? Why would we ever? Why would you want that again for any reason? If Kamala Harris wasn't, very interestingly, the first woman Blasian president, if she was a bag of rocks, she would be better than Donald Trump. So there's that. But anyway, I wanted to take the positive spin if I want to write a song about it. It draws on some text from her speech at the Democratic National Convention.
And here's November Stanza. Thanks, everybody.
At the park, my mother would say, stay close. But my father would say, as he smiled, run, Kamala, run. Don't be afraid. Don't let anything stop you. Yes, I wanna family by blood, and all of them family